Ben was in there. He was.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going, Ryan?
It's going all right. How are you?
Good. You like that? That was my Halloween Comic Fest costume.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
You need to send a picture of that to our great letters page, wizard at wizard.horse. And we'll run it for you. We bought a .horse URL. It's very confusing for everyone.
Yeah, it even spun me for a loop. You told me to say
Yeah.
wizard at wizard.horse, and I was just like, all right, I guess.
Yeah. I wonder how many letters we've lost because people type it in wrong or think it's fake. So we have to constantly stress that it's not fake.
So, yeah, thank you so much for joining us. This is our little comic book club in upstate New York. We're huge fans. A number of us have been pulling the book since the beginning. And I think we just talked about it for about an hour. And everybody really seemed to enjoy it. So
awesome. That's great. Excellent. So what do you guys want to talk about?
I mean, I have some questions made up. But if you guys ever have anything, we can throw it out there. I was interested in your beginning in comics. We can start there.
Okay, sure. Hold on a second. I'm trying to figure out how to make you guys larger. Because I'm pretty large right now, and I don't want to be large.
We can move closer.
I don't know. I can turn off
there, everyone.
I can turn on echo cancellation. Let's see what that does. Turned it on. Does it sound great? Do I sound good?
Yeah, on our end.
All right, cool. So you want to know about my start in comics?
Yeah, I mean, I know curse words wasn't your beginning of your career, so bring us up to speed.
Yeah. So I failed for many, many years to get into comics. Trying to do mainstream stuff. Pencil submissions for years and years to Marvel and DC with no success. So then I eventually just said, screw it. I'm going to do what makes me happy. I'm going to make the comics I want to make. So that's when I started working on a book called God Hates Astronauts.
Yeah.
Which I did self-published for a while. And it didn't work. Nobody liked it and nobody would publish it. So I stopped, and I stopped for like 3 years. But then it somehow, some of the copies I'd given out had gotten around, and people started to really come up to me and want me to do more. And so then I did more, and did it as a webcomic and built up an audience that way. And it all cultivated in doing a Kickstarter for all the self-published and webcomic stuff all put together, and the Kickstarter did very, very well. So then by that point, I had started working for Image, just filling in for friends on their books. Image is very, non-formal in general. Like, you don't get hired by Image, really. It was just, I'm friends with this guy. He's drawing this book. He can't meet his deadline, so I'll fill in kind of thing. So that's when I started working on Manhattan projects. And then I worked on Bedlam as well. Just like a go-to fill-in guy who could do a couple different weird styles. And through that, I got to know Image, and they got to know God Hates Astronauts, and then they started publishing God Hates Astronauts for me, and I did a bunch of new stuff through Image in 2015. And then that failed. But people really liked it, but but yeah, so like, I don't know, I have this cult following with that kind of stuff, and the people that like it really like it. It just strangely, like, it's a sense of humor that works really well and has a good audience in TV, but not as much in comics these days, or the comics that have that sense of humor are usually web comics. So it was just, it's always like an effort to find my audience, because people tend to like it once they read it, but it's just a question of getting people to read it. So my great plan was that I was going to team up with my buddy Charles and do something so that people would read the book, because Charles, has a decent name in comics, and we've been friends for a long time. And so that's where we started talking about working together and doing curse words. So that was kind of the evolution of stuff. And then here and there, I'd done Marvel, DC stuff, and IDW and Boom, and pretty much every company that needs someone to do some dumb thing, so yeah, no, I just my career only really took off once I started leaning into doing the absurd and bizarre and drawing things that I like, instead of trying to make people happy by drawing super serious superheroes that should never be super serious. So yeah, that's my really long answer to your question.
Very cool. Yeah, much appreciated. So you and Charles knew each other prior to Curse Words, and did you both sort of work your way to what we have now, or was it mainly like Charles came to you and was like, "Yo, I got an idea," and you were like, "Yeah, I can totally draw that."
Yeah, no, I'd known him for a few years, and it was while I was, before I was doing God Hates Astronauts for Image, and we had talked about working together, but then Image said, "Yeah, go ahead and do a monthly series." So I said, "Sorry, Charles, I got to do this," because it was, my dream job kind of thing. So I took it and I did it, and it was awesome. And I think I produced a lot of good comics that a lot of people really liked. But financially, my audience just wasn't big enough. Stores, it was always just a question of getting people to try and read it. So with Curse Words, we had this idea that to take the fun kind of imaginative, off-kilter absurdist stuff that I like to do, but structure it more so that it could find a wider audience. And so that was kind of the melding of Charles and I's sensibilities, that he was able to actually have motivation for his characters and consequences for actions, and things that normal stories would have that I'm not great at really planning out. So one thing that we figured out pretty early on when we were working together was that whether it was good or bad, this book had a tone that was different from any other book out there. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that it's so collaborative. It's not just I sit around waiting for a script and he tells me everything to do. We bounce things back and forth. I do character designs, and that inspires him to figure out what this character is all about. The original book started with we did a pitch for Image for a book, and then we turned it in. And then that day, Image Expo happened, and they announced a book that was very similar.
Oh.
So Eric Stevenson said, "We really like it, but we can't do two books like this. So let's go back to the drawing board." So, and that was an idea that Charles had for a long time. It was based in Detroit, where we're both originally from, and dealt with economics and politics and poverty and all sorts of weird vigilante hero stuff. But that didn't work out. So we started talking about what else we'd want to do. And Charles said, "Well, what about we just do the story of a wizard, but he's a dick?" And I was like, "Yeah, all right." I'm like, "Well," because I wanted to stress that we could do, with comics, you can do anything with the visuals you want. It's an unlimited special effects budget.
Sure.
So, and the fact that so many comics try to be super serious and super grounded in reality, I think there's a market for that, but there's too much of it. So we really wanted to play into the fact that this was not a movie, and that we could do anything we wanted, that you can draw. Anything you can draw, you can do here. And so the idea of doing magic in a book about a wizard was immediately attractive because we could do whatever we wanted. And then we just had to figure out why this character can't just immediately win everything all the time. right? Like when you have a superpower, you have to figure out the limitations, and that's what the magic is. So you got to figure out why Wizard can't just turn everyone into dust, and then he just is always winning. So that's where we started figuring out the idea of getting cut off from this magical power, and I came up with the idea of his beard being a meter for how much power he has, which we explore in that first book, definitely.
Fake beard.
Yeah, and the fake beard stuff. Yeah, yeah. The fake beard was really hard to draw because I had to make it look like a fake beard, and not that I was doing a very bad drawing of a beard.
Right.
Like, oh, that beard looks terrible. Doesn't even look like it's attached to the face. It's like, yeah, well, I got to make that deliberate looking. But yeah. So have any of you guys ever read any of the comics of Fletcher Hanks? Do you know who that is?
No.
Okay, that's your homework. Fantagraphics just released a life-spanning book of all of his career work that actually ends. The final page of the book is a scan of his death certificate. It's pretty intense. Fletcher Hanks made comics in the 20s and 30s, and he was an abusive drunk, terrible man, but he made the most bizarre comics that you will ever see. Like, whatever you see in a current Adult Swim show, he was doing that in the 20s and 30s.
Wow.
And his drawings are terrible, and his comics are so hard to read because you can't follow them at all. But I mean, they're just totally crazy. And so he's famous for creating two characters. All of his characters are in the public domain. So if you guys want to make comics using Fletcher Hanks' characters, you can. Like, they're all out there. But he made a character named Phantoma, Queen of the Jungle, I think she's called. And it's a woman, and she just has a skull for a face. And she basically protects the jungle by using magic in really strange ass ways. Like, a bunch of troopers are parachuting into the jungle, and so she creates a bunch of tigers in the air, so the tigers fall and claw their parachutes. So the parachutes have holes, and then all the soldiers fall and die.
Right.
Like, it's stuff like that. But I really like Fletcher Hanks quite a bit, even though he's a monster of a human, or was. And so we started talking about that, and that's where the whole idea of really like figuring out like a wizard that is a dick, right? Like an early idea we had, we'll see in the second trade, but it involves Wizard turning someone into furniture as a way of punishment. And I was like, well, like, that's something you don't normally see in a comic, but it's definitely something you'd see in a Fletcher Hanks comic. So
Right.
we started looking at those and using those for inspiration. And so that's your homework. If you want to see something super weird, there's it's like a big, awesome hardcover that Fantagraphics just put out.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Very cool. I'll definitely take a look.
Sure.
So, I mean, you definitely have a very distinctive style, and it's super saturated colors, awesome inking and stuff. What do you use medium-wise?
I plan out all my stuff traditionally, like thumbnails, then I scan them in, and then I sketch in like blue on top of that in the computer, and I make all my panel borders in the computer, and then I print them out on the page. So then I get a page through the printer that has all my panel borders all clean, and then like some blue line stuff that I'll remove the blue in the computer, and then I draw on that, and then I ink on top of that. And I use a brush pen, and then all the colors done digitally for both volumes 1 and 2. Volume 2 comes out in January, but
break.
yeah, volume 1 has a different colors than volume 2, and both of the colors that we've had, I do like finishes on, so they get it about 75% of the way there, and then I like finish all the pages off. And usually it's a lot of brightening colors and pushing depth so that there's more depth and more space in each panel. And then I put the whole issue together and do all the design as well. So it's a lot of different parts to it. I worked as a graphic designer for 3 years, and I did a lot of book prep for printing, so I know how to do a lot of that stuff, which is why I've done a lot of self-publishing. So yeah, that's how it works.
Interesting. Yeah, I imagine. I have to imagine most artists sort of find their own methods.
Sure. Yeah, and there's I think a lot of artists coming up are always looking for some tool that's going to make them a great artist, and it's almost never the way things work.
Right.
It's whatever is the most comfortable for you to use. There isn't some smoking gun, aha, now I'm a professional comic artist tool out there, but there's plenty of tools you can use that make the process easier.
Very cool. Let me see what else. Do you guys have any questions?
How was the Montel Williams show?
Weird. It was really weird. It was very weird. I was on the Montel Williams show in 2003. So it's been a long time. So yeah, no, he was very fake, and and I had to share a green room with a man who, after the show, I figured out had killed someone, and that's why he was on the show. So, and then I had to take shared a limo with him to the airport, and so knowing this man was a murderer, I had to go to the airport with him. It was really strange.
That's very strange.
Yeah. It's an outrageously long story that would take about 2 hours to tell. So
that's just a bit, yeah. Like, I noticed it in your bio in the back, so
yeah,
short form version.
Yeah.
So I assume, well, I am curious about like sort of the split between duties. It definitely sounds like you and Charles are pretty collaborative, and like you might have come up with the moving, walking Eiffel Tower. And he might say, "Yeah, okay, that's acceptable."
No, that was him. So, some of that stuff you don't really know, because I think he's trying to make me happy with what I have to draw. At times, because he knows that I have. But he always doesn't. He's not a very visual person. He's a great writer, but he doesn't really understand what's hard to draw. And so he thought that it would be really fun for me to draw a living Eiffel Tower, but in actuality, it's an extremely complicated, detailed thing that's very hard to do. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll figure this out. But yeah, in terms of like the collaboration, he writes all the words. Like all the words are definitely his.
Sure.
And I think most of the setup of the world has been mainly just a lot of back and forth, where I do drawings and designs. I came up with what Wizard looks like. I don't know. I like people with like sunglasses and beards. I think that's like an interesting kind of like way of hiding your face. So yeah, I just drew that, and then I drew a koala sitting with him, and I was like, man, he needs a familiar. I'd really like to draw a koala because I've never done that. And he was very against it, saying that it would make the book too silly. And then when we pitched the image, they were afraid of the book being too silly. And so they said, don't put the koala on the cover of issue 1. Which I had already drawn the koala into issue 1's cover. So there is a version of the cover that is not in that book, where Margaret is actually sitting, holding the handlebars in front of Wizard as he's on his motorcycle. But again, there's just in comics the whole story that publishers follow by, and it happens time and time again, is that people who read comics don't have a sense of humor. And it's totally not true, but I'm waiting for a comedy book to actually succeed because people don't buy them. People buy them and they really like them, but they don't hit a broad audience for whatever reason. Humor is very popular in film and television, but in comics, it's a cult, it's a niche thing. So they really encouraged us, even though they really wanted to do more comedy stuff, that they couldn't. None of their comedy books are really working that well, outside of I Hate Fairyland, which has nothing to do with the fact that it's comedy or not. It's just Scotty, and everybody, everyone loves Scotty, so it doesn't even matter what the content is, So that's kind of an outlier. But so I think that they wanted us to push it more in the direction of Saga, a book that's absurdist but not outright funny. And so that's kind of the direction that we were led in. I think since then we found the people that speak out to us really respond to things like Margaret, the Eiffel Tower, and some of the sillier things, which I think are more memorable and more fun, especially in a climate of comics that tend to be very serious and very violent. We wanted to make something that, even though it has a really dark tone at times, it's not. It still has a sense of joy and a sense of fun to it, even when it is dark. It's not overwhelming or depressing or like upsetting, I guess.
Sure.
So yeah.
Very cool. You definitely have some interesting paneling throughout the book. Was that something you just sort of organically came upon?
Yeah, well, I wanted to do something that wasn't a grid, but I also wanted to do something that was really structured, which is part of why I make all of my panel borders in the computer. So that the gutter width is always the same, and then the stroke for the border is always the same width throughout the entire thing. I like doing that because I think that it makes it easier to read the comic. So you have all the variety within the panels, within like that black box, but the spacing between the boxes and of the borders is all uniform, so it doesn't get confusing. It doesn't hurt your ability to read it. I very much intentionally make all my comics to be read with no words. Like I try really, really hard that if you looked at this, you could tell what was happening without any of the dialogue balloons in. And so that's something I really, really stand by, and I think tends to work at times in this book. But I really wanted to do something that wasn't just squares. And so then I just was like, well, what if I just make this panel border a W?
For Wizard.
And so I did. And then I had to at first I was doing it all the time. And then I was like, well, I can't do it in every panel. It will get really, it will lose its punch. And in the first issue, at least, I didn't really know when I was supposed to use it or not. I hadn't really figured it out. But as the series goes on, I try to be very deliberate and use it for when things magical are happening or when wizards are involved. So especially in the second arc, you get a lot of the president and his advisors and stuff, and all that is very, very straight until magic gets involved, and then it becomes the W kind of thing. But yeah, so I think with every creative project like this, you see in the first couple of issues, you're really trying to figure out what the hell everything means and what your rules are. You see it on TV shows as well. When you see the pilot and then things change when the series actually gets going. So that's kind of what our first issue was. And the first issue was actually originally 40 pages, and then we cut it down to 36. So then I had to cut panels out of pages and paste them together and fit them all together. And so I've got all these. The original art is a bunch of panels that got cut out of the book because the comics are done in multiples of 4. And your typical comic is 32 pages, and so and that includes the front and back cover. And so when we had to be 40 pages, we were going to need 44 pages because we need a front, inside cover, inside, back, and back cover. And so that would have upped our cost. And we didn't know that because Image didn't respond to our request of, can we do a double-sized issue? So when they said, you should probably, we'll give you some extra pages, but, you don't make any more money on the book for having a few extra pages. So, so we had to cut it up and like put it all together. So that whole first issue was like really trying to figure out what our rules were, what this is going to look like.
How many pages? Yeah.
Yeah. How many pages is going to be? So, I feel like issue 5 of that first trade is where it really starts. Like I really started to have a clear idea of what the rules were and the way things are going to look, and how my panel layouts were going to be. But still, like there's one panel in there where I drew Margaret with a tail, and then someone told me, koalas don't have tails. And I know that, but I just drew her with a tail. So you got like a little nub at one point. Yeah. I can't remember if I removed that for the trade. It's definitely in a single issue in issue 5. But people definitely are paying attention and called me out on that. But so yeah, it took a while to like actually get in the routine where I don't have to get reference from my own earlier drawings of people to remember what they look like.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah.
You guys did a van tour this summer, right? How was that?
It was one of the best things I've ever done. But I will never do it again. Absolutely never do it again. It was super hard. We did 14 stores over 5,000 miles in a van. We rented a van and then got it vinyl wrapped to have like all the curse words art like around the sides of it. And it was sponsored by stores. We started with stores that we knew. We reached out to them first, and they sponsored the tour, and we had an exclusive hardcover of the first volume with us. In comics, everyone gets really excited about a new issue 1, and then your momentum just drops really fast. So we wanted to have something to really hit hard with our first trade, like our first collection, so that people would, pay attention and, jump on board with the book. So the idea was the van tour. Which, was super, super hard, but a lot of fun. Have a lot of good stories from it. Everything went really well, which is surprising. The attendance was great at stores. And yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know if other books are really going to start doing that kind of thing. The hardest part was the schedule in terms of, Charles was still writing books, at Marvel, and I still had to draw an issue. So I drew all of issue 8 on that tour on the road. So it was 1 month in the van, and I still hit my monthly deadline. So it was basically wake up in some hotel somewhere, draw in the hotel until they kick us out, check out, then either find a coffee shop, or if the signing's later, or if the signing's earlier, go to the signing. And then you do the signing for 3 hours, and then you get in the van, you drive to your next destination, you check into a hotel, and then you go into the hotel room and you go to work again. Wow. So, and then when I was driving, Charles was writing, and when, and vice versa. So, that we got a lot of work done on the road, because we had to. So, I think of it as the equivalent of a band touring and recording an album at the same time. It was a little bit too much. If we didn't have to work during it, because we thought that we were going to like sightsee and have a lot of fun and check out restaurants and bars and, whatever. No. I brought all these movies with me that we're going to watch. Didn't watch them. Didn't watch a single one. So yeah, I'm super happy it's done, but I'm super happy we did it.
Yeah. What happened to the van?
We unwrapped it and returned it. Yeah.
Well, do you guys have any questions?
I do. After all that, what was your What was your favorite thing to draw, like your favorite character?
I said I really like drawing Wizard. I think some of that comes out of me designing him exactly like a character I want to draw.
Right.
Yeah. Syzygy is really fun to draw because it's super fast, and I can do it, like when I have panels of Syzygy talking to people, it's really a fast page because it's just like messing around with black ink, and
Right, yeah.
like it doesn't have to be very precise, and he doesn't really have any details within his form. So that's nice. I think Botchko the Hogtar is my favorite evil wizard to draw, but he's also takes the longest to draw.
Mhm. Sure,
If you guys have only read the first trade, so you haven't seen everyone, but I really like drawing Lady Violet in the second trade. She has hair that looks like stacks of cinnamon buns or something. It's like Princess Leia hair to the max. It's like if Princess Leia's entire head was Princess Leia buns.
A huge hole for abdomen.
Yeah, she's got a hole in her too. Yeah, no, she's my favorite. She's my favorite character to draw at this point. But yeah, I don't know. Like so much of it is I designed these characters because, like that's the great part of create your own stuff. I design the characters because they're what I want to draw. And so I don't really have any characters that I don't like drawing. Other than I don't really like drawing any of the president and his men in the second volume, because they are all they're the only characters I did not design for the book, because they are the president and his cabinet from Letter 44, which is Charles's other career-owned book. So for what I still don't understand how it all works, but for whatever reason Charles thought that was a good idea, and I said I like that kind of crossover kind of thing. Almost no one has said anything to us about it. I don't know. I don't know if that means no one's reading Letter 44, or if my drawings don't look close enough to the artist on that book's drawings. But those are the only characters in the book that I did not design, so those are not as fun to draw.
I've got a quick question for you. Have you and Charles determined if there's a light at the end of the tunnel for curse words? Is it going to wrap up at any point?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, with any creator-owned book, well, actually any book in comics, the term ongoing just means we're going to keep doing it until we can't afford to do it anymore. But usually also it means we're going to do it until we can't do it anymore, and we're going to try and get to this specific point. So the goal right now is 30 issues, which would be 6 trades. And we're having our first fill-in is coming in December. It's the holiday special, which is drawn by my studio mate Mike Norton. So I figure if someone's going to fill in, it's going to be the guy that stands 5 feet away from me at work every day, so I can see what he's doing. So we are in this point where Image at first had said they want us to take a couple months off between every arc so that we can make sure that we put books out on time. And then when they realized that I'm a crazy workaholic and I put out all my books on time, they now want us to never take months off, which, becomes impossible. So that's why instead of having issue 11 come out in December, it's going to be the holiday special, and then the trade will come out in January, and then issue 11 will come out in February.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be a 3-year run. And 30 issues. It might be a little more than 30 issues if we keep doing specials, but it's supposed to get up to issue number 30. And after we finished the first trade, Charles and I sat down and figured out where it needed to get to, and what our ending was going to be. And so now we have like a kind of broad outline of what happens in every trade. And that's kind of the way that we broke down the story. So we're really like, at first you kind of set up things and hope you can figure out like a resolution later. Like I like creating a lot of mysteries in my character designs or little details here and there that I can either explain later or not explain later. Like Wizard's tattoos and like the brand on his chest, or the fact that he has a scar across his throat, which, you know, I don't know how many people pick up on those little things, but there are things that I put into the character, knowing where it's going and realizing, well, we could figure out like where this happened, and we could tell that later as an interesting, you know, story. And there's definitely something that we put into it that is secret and only we know, that has been there the whole time, that will hopefully be really fun when it gets revealed. So you know, I don't know, we're just kind of having fun, as much fun as we can, and then I rely on Charles to structure it and make you know, make it all make sense and have a lot of dramatic tension and so yeah, so we complement each other well in that sense.
Super cool, man. I'm really looking forward to the future of this book for sure.
Awesome. Thanks for reading it.
Yeah.
Quickly, before we let you go, this is something maybe you can or can't answer. We had a debate about it the first hour. So the world Wizard creates inside the bottle, obviously we see the splash panel there, or splash page there, and then the first trade ends on something that looks very similar. Is it the idea that Wizard created the bottle world based off his home world, but in a much more fantastical, wonderful way? Or is it something else completely?
You're incorrect.
Okay,
I mean, I can tell you because you're supposed to know. You're supposed to be able to figure it out, but we only gave you the very beginning of it there, which, you know, that splash was always our big reveal, and then when we figured out who Margaret was going to be, that became a more powerful reveal in that issue. And still, so many people did not understand what the Margaret reveal meant, you know, and what that page meant. So we had to explain that. And then the stadium thing was even more confusing to people because it's really strange. But what it is he shows us this stadium. It is the same stadium that he put in the bottle. Right. The bottle world is the whole world. He created the whole world. And something happens over time that makes it all go evil, right? And all crazy and magical. So, you know, we don't explicitly say that, but you can infer that from there. And then stuff that happens in the second arc kind of continues on that route, and it's really, I think, only into the third arc where we really start to really explicitly say that. But that's what it is. But you don't know how it got to be the way it is, and it's you know, a total like, how can that be? What does that mean? That doesn't make any sense. And then we'll explain it over time.
Sure, yeah. Okay, well, that was like a competing theory with the one I just presented, and now I feel foolish, but awesome.
No, I like that too. No, that's good. That's good.
Very cool. So, I mean, I want to thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome. You know, really glad you're able to...
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. I like talking. It's fun.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to plug, or anything you've been reading that's real good, or?
No, you know, it's a secret of people that work in comics. We don't really read comics because we don't have the time. / we spend so much time with our head in the world of comics that we don't want to think about it anymore. Yeah, we go with people that make comics just watch a bunch of movies and play video games and board games and stuff.
That's good stuff too.
Yeah, like I work out of a studio with all pro comic people and work every day, and nobody's reading anything. No one's up on anything. No one knows what's really going on unless they have to for the book they're working on. You know,
Sure.
Which I remember reading an interview with Dave Sim when I was in high school, and he said basically this, that he doesn't read comics, and I thought it was insane. And then I became an adult and learned like what this job is like, and And I realized that yeah, like you don't have the time / you don't really want to spend more time in comics
Yeah.
at the end of the day. If that makes any sense.
Sure.
Like the guy that works at the candy factory doesn't just go home and eat candy all day. You know what I mean?
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you
Okay, cool.
for joining us, and can't wait to see what's coming in the third trade.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be really fun. The holiday special comes out in December 20th, and then the trade. The book is supposed to always come out the third week of the month, so and pretty much we haven't missed a month where there wasn't a new curse words thing on the stands the third week of the month. So hopefully that will continue.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Good night, man.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for reading.